Shipboard security is about managing risk. Risk comes from the outside, criminal activity, threats, accidents, and it comes from the inside, carelessness, or lack of policies or procedures. For mariners, risk management begins with a thorough security assessment and survey. Security breaches occur when a bad intention meets a good opportunity. The best defense against bad intentions, and those who would do us harm, is to deny them the opportunity in the first place.
And we're going to be seeing security coming from the international sector, IMO and SOLAS, as well as...
The assessment and survey process is a team effort. The ship security officer may designate other crew members to help. He shares the methods he intends to use in evaluating the ship's vulnerabilities and security status. As part of his preparation, the ship security officer is already looking at 4 key areas of emphasis: current security procedures, sensitive vessel operations, possible threats and their likelihood of occurrence, and any obvious weaknesses or vulnerabilities. The best preparation is creating various attack scenarios, from the specific threat all the way through the strategy that can help to mitigate that threat. A useful procedure for evaluating attack scenarios is in 5 steps. In simplified form, they are: Step 1. Consider potential threats. Select a specific scenario under specific circumstances. An intruder plants explosives in the engine room, for instance. Step 2 is the consequence assessment. Evaluate the scenario in terms of potential consequence in 3 areas: death and injury, economic impact, environmental impact. Step 3 is the vulnerability assessment. Evaluate the scenario in terms of the ship's vulnerability in 2 areas: accessibility, physical barriers to attack, and organic security, the ability of the ship's personnel and plans to deter an attack. Step 4 is mitigation. Determine if the scenario requires a mitigation strategy, essentially protective measures. Choose to mitigate immediately, to consider options, or to simply document the scenario for future consideration. The final step is implementation methods. Implement a mitigation strategy or protective measures. Consider various options for their potential effectiveness and for their feasibility. Nothing gets the team down to cases like this 5-step, risk-based decision-making process. The more scenarios tested, the more awareness of vulnerabilities and strengths will grow. Document the results and incorporate them into the final security plan.
When you were in Japan, those ports you were in, was the security pretty good?
Yes.
It was? Okay.
The job's changed. We're more security conscious than we ever were before, and more safety conscious than we ever were before.
Here, this is it right.
The job in question is a familiar one to most mariners entering United States ports. A U.S. port state control inspection is a good model for the security survey required by the ISPS code.
We ask them to make sure if they are escorting people, they do escort and watch that they do exit the ship, that they don't just leave anybody wandering around on their own.
Experienced inspectors know what to look for. Here's a quick checklist of key things to know before conducting an on-scene survey. For starters, the general layout of the ship, the location of areas which should have restricted access, such as the bridge and steering gear areas. The location and function of access points to the ship. The location of potential hiding places for stowaways or other unlawful visitors. The cargo spaces and stowage arrangements. The location of supplies and maintenance equipment. Locations where unaccompanied baggage is stored. The emergency and standby equipment available to maintain essential services. The numbers, reliability, and security duties of the ship's crew. The existing security and safety equipment for passengers and crew. Evacuation routes and assembly points to ensure orderly evacuation. Existing agreements with private security companies. Existing protective measures and procedures currently in effect. And finally, the open deck arrangements. Height of the deck above the water, and when alongside any waterfront facility, the height at various levels of the tide and at various stages of cargo working.
As you can see, there's two different types. You have ships that are at anchor and you have ships that are at the dock, and the security is somewhat the same, but it is a little different than when you're at the dock where the first line of defense is a gangway.
We enlisted the help of maritime security consultant Mike Jewell to highlight the important points of emphasis in the on-scene security survey.
It's vital that that gangway watch finds out who you are, makes a phone call to somebody in the house to escort you up here.
The on-scene survey is a comprehensive look at security status and readiness. Using the information compiled so far and the checklist, observe, inspect, and ask questions. Are all security duties being properly performed? Are only the authorized people accessing restricted areas? Are you controlling the embarkation of people and their baggage? Are you monitoring deck areas and areas around the vessel?
This is to the house, which is another route that you have to watch and protect, because people can get to the house where the captain, the bridge, where everybody is, and that's one of the places that somebody would want to come in.
Use common sense in the survey. The greater the vulnerability, the potential to do harm, the more detailed attention needed to protective measures. Big threats, big responses. Key areas that require critical attention are cargo and ship's stores operations, crew and passenger safety systems, and navigation, machinery spaces, and steering control stations.
As you can see, we're in after steering. And in after steering, you can take complete control of the steering of this ship.
It goes without saying that the bridge is the critical nerve center of the ship. Officers and crew not only need to follow procedures on the bridge, they need constant vigilance too. Check communication systems. Make sure port-specific security information is available, and open communication channels.
Normally, if you see somebody on the ship that you don't know and it's not being escorted, then there's something wrong. You should note that and quickly call the bridge and say there's people on board that we don't know who they are.
You can collect all the data and information in the world, but if you fail to properly evaluate that information, you don't make any progress. The evaluation stage turns the assessment into action, the procedures and operations that will become the heart of the ship's security plan. Evaluate established security guidance for changes or improvements, emergency response procedures, the level of supervision of various personnel, the frequency and effectiveness of security watches and inspections. Evaluate key control procedures, access control policies, security communications equipment, security doors, barriers, and lighting, and any surveillance equipment on board. The security team meets to incorporate the on-scene survey information into various attack scenarios: bomb threats, hostage-taking, piracy, sabotage.
There are in boxes pre-loading necessary to open.
Use the security survey as a tool for analysis and constructive criticism. Don't point fingers, simply identify vulnerabilities. These may include conflicting policies, conflicting duty assignments, watchkeeping and manning constraints, training deficiencies, and insufficient, poorly maintained, or poor quality security equipment. The security assessment and on-scene survey are the foundations of shipboard security. With these two critical steps completed, the ship's security plan can be prepared.